Margaret Caldwell had been parking her fancy SUV on my farm road for months, and somehow I ended up looking like the bad guy. This HOA president blocked my only access path every day, insisting on some made-up community right-of-way. When I couldn't get my equipment through to harvest, she just called it my tough luck. As my crops rotted in the fields, she acted like it was no big deal. When I finally lost my temper and told her to move, she dialed the cops. "He's threatening me on my own property," she lied right to their faces. My land, my grandfather's road, my family's farm for over a century. But her slick paperwork had them convinced I was the problem. That night, staring at thousands in ruined produce, I decided to build something huge that would send her SUV flying so far she'd need a map to track it down. Let me tell you about myself. Robert Harlan, third-generation farmer in Millbrook County, Georgia. My grandfather snapped up this 847-acre plot back in 1962, dreaming of the finest heirloom tomatoes east of the Mississippi. The morning mist still hangs on those fields, and the deep, loamy scent of Georgia dirt after a rainstorm reminds me why 3 generations of Harlan stuck with this life. My dad branched out into specialty corn. I was meant to ease into it, learn the trade, maybe update a few things. But last spring, I buried my wife, Emily, after her long battle with cancer, leaving me to run the place alone. The farm became my refuge, the steady rumble of my John Deere tractor drowning out the grief. 3 years ago, developers from Atlanta bought the neighboring land and turned it into Oakwood Meadows, a gated community with homes pricier than most folks' lifetime earnings. Most neighbors were fine, even glad to live next to a real working farm. But every garden has its weed. Margaret Caldwell moved into the biggest mansion 6 months after Emily passed. Ex-real estate broker from the city, divorced, childless, and dead sure that being HOA president made her ruler of rural Georgia. She eyed my calloused hands and wore clothes like I was a blight on her perfect view. The trouble kicked off with my access road, a gravel lane my grandfather laid in 1962 to reach our backfields. What Margaret didn't know, and what I'd learn soon, was that Grandpa had outsmarted any lawyer around. That road had federal protections from the 1962 drought emergency. Blocking it wasn't just trespassing, it was against the law big time. But that's jumping ahead. She started by parking her BMW SUV at the edge, saying she was checking boundaries. When I asked her to shift it for my machinery, she'd smile and say just a minute. Minutes turned to hours, then she brought a chair and books. One morning, finding her lost in a romance novel while my harvester idled, I knew we had trouble. "Ma'am, this is private land," I said, showing her Grandpa's deed. Margaret peered up like I was a child. "Mr. Harlan, I've studied easement laws. This road serves the community now. You can't hog it for your heavy operations." "My family built, maintains, and taxes this road," I shot back. She dismissed the deed like junk mail. "Laws evolve, dear. My cousin Bill says adverse possession gives us rights." Cousin Bill, small-town connections posing as law. Soon, her parking was like clockwork, hitting when I needed the road most. Chair became tent became shed. She added cameras pointed at my farm for records. Every talk ended with her patronizing pat and lecture on cooperation. The stink of rotting tomatoes hit in September. $20,000 gone because I couldn't access the fields. October brought her tech upgrade, a tall camera pole on my side, labeled Oakwood Agricultural Oversight. Knocking on her door, she showed me monitors like a command center. Documenting patterns for our easement filing, she beamed. "Easement filing?" That's when I saw her plan to grab my road legally, one illegal video at a time. I headed to the Millbrook courthouse, where Evelyn Ramirez, the longtime clerk, spread out papers. "Your grandpa was sharp," she said, highlighting the 1962 survey. Federal Agricultural Emergency Route. Blocking it's a federal offense, $10,000 minimum per time. Grandpa had read every rule, saving our hide. Her cameras broke laws too, no permits, filming neighbors. Cousin Bill filed with an invalid Alabama license. Susan Novak dropped by with casserole and gossip. She's filming my grandson biking, complaining about kids. Frank Novak, her husband, an engineer, hinted at physics projects. Deputy Mike Novak couldn't act yet, but suggested talking to his dad about federal stuff. Margaret upped it with security. Victor Hayes in a squeaky uniform, setting up a table like a checkpoint. Monitoring safety, he claimed. But his company was defunct, unlicensed fraud. Federal penalties jumped for conspiracy. Frank showed me trebuchet videos, medieval launchers. Theoretical scaling could hurl 4,000 pounds 150 feet. Just the weight of her SUV. For historical demos, naturally. Margaret filed a harassment complaint. My farming was intimidation. Mike investigated reluctantly. Then her $50,000 lawsuit, pure nonsense, filed wrong county. Linda Chun at the Gazette dug in. Bill's firm sanctioned, facing suspension. Pattern of property grabs. Community rallied. Susan's meetings turned strategy sessions. Dorothy Simmons griped about rooster complaints. Tom Whitaker supplied materials. Harold Jenkins, retired engineer, confirmed Grandpa's Road as critical infrastructure. Fines compounding. The game changer, Grandpa's old box with 1962 USDA letter. Road classified as national food security during Cuban Missile Crisis. Federal crimes for interference, $50,000 plus per violation, possible jail. Harold explained, wait for max incrimination. Meanwhile, trebuchet planning advanced. Blueprints for heritage defense demo. We build it, 40-foot arm, 3,000-pound counterweight. Permitted as educational exhibit. Heritage Farm Days festival planned. Media, schools buzzing. Margaret's TV interview backfired. Reporter grilled her on blocking. Viral clip. Her injunction called it terrorism. Judge shredded it, referred bill for fraud. Federal agents visited her, explaining fines. Victor recorded them, added charges. Her HOA meeting flopped. Conspiracy rants. Mike served restraining order. Victor tried arresting him, jail time. Sunday, festival packed, 500 attendees, live TV. Her SUV still blocked, deemed abandoned. I announced, demo removes federal access obstacle. Counterweight dropped. SUV soared 147 feet in a mud pit. Cheers erupted. Margaret stared. Agents hit her with $847,000 fines. Bankruptcy, foreclosure followed. Bill disbarred, Victor imprisoned. 6 months on, Heritage Farm Center thrives. Physics fests, scholarships in Emily's name. Community improved. HOA gone, tourism up. Federal precedent protects farms. Margaret's in Florida, tame now. I wait to school buses, not blocks. Tomatoes ripen freely. What do you think about handling injustice like this? Share in the comments, especially on violence in everyday conflicts. Take a stand. I'd love your views.